Hey everybody, Dr. Glenn here, and thanks for joining me today on Facebook Live. And today we are going to be continuing our talk with part two of the cholesterol myth and the dangers of statin drugs. And the mystery will get deeper and more interesting. Remember what we said last week. There's a great saying that we put up last week from William Olser. Dr. Olser was one of the founders of Johns Hopkins Hospital, and he is actually the man that originated the concept of doing residency programs in medical school. So pretty influential and important man. And what he said is, the greater the ignorance, the greater the dogmatism. And it couldn't be any more true than when we talk about cholesterol and statin drugs. So we pop that out of there. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how the myth has been perpetuated. We're going to do a little review, but one of the things we're going to talk about today is the uncovering of a 40-year-old previously unpublished trial. I'm going to show you about that in just a minute. That shows that replacing saturated fat with vegetable oil lowered total cholesterol by 14%. But for every 30-point drop in total cholesterol, there was a 22% increase in chance of death. Not a good trade-off. By the way, if you're out there, just give me a thumbs up, or just let me know who you are, let me know who's watching, and I'll give you a shout out there. So we're going to go through a couple of statements here, then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this. So there's that. Also, there are many other trials that have also found that replacing saturated fats with vegetable oils increases mortality risk from all cases, including coronary heart disease and cardiovascular diseases. As a matter of fact, an article published in the Royal Society of Medicine in the UK just a few years ago shows that cholesterol levels below 180 increase all-cause mortality rates. And I see patients coming in all the time that are having low cholesterol, 160, 150 or something like that, and their docs still got them on statin drugs. And I'm thinking, this is just absolutely stupid. But it's the perpetuation of the cholesterol myth. And remember, the greater the ignorance, the greater the dogmatism. One other thing, processed vegetable oils contribute to devastating attacks on your health. We're going to go over a few of those today and a lot more of them next week. And attacks on your brain. We have had an absolute escalation in cognitive decline, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all of this since this whole thing about increasing carbohydrate and lowering cholesterol began in 1977 when George McGovern chaired the Senate Subcommittee on Diet and Nutrition, and they told everybody to start eating lots and lots of whole grain. Nothing could have been worse for us than that. Now, if you were here last week, you may remember this fellow, Dr. Ansel Keys. Dr. Keys was a physiologist at the University of Minnesota. And if you'll remember from last week also, Dr. Keys got a hold of some research that came out of the Soviet Union in the 1950s, where this scientist in Russia, Soviet Union then, fed a bunch of rabbits, high-fat, high-protein diet. They all developed heart disease and died. All right, well, what nobody thought about at the time, all these brilliant people, is that rabbits are, what? Who knows? Anybody want to pop it up there for me? Rabbits are vegetarians. So what happens is the Russian scientist goes back several years later, does the same study on dogs, and none of the dogs develop heart disease. So one of the things that Dr. Keys did as well is he did this thing. I'm going to show this to you right here. Let me get this out of the way. Dr. Keys did something called the Minnesota Coronary experiment from 1968 to 1973, which utterly disproved his position. But guess what Dr. Keys didn't do? He didn't publish it. You can get stuff published that's biased, but when you don't publish stuff that disagrees with your agenda, that's also biased. It's also called being dishonest. This particular experiment, the paper that was not published, was brought to light by this fellow here, Dr. Christopher Ramsden. And Dr. Ramsden is a medical doctor. He's like a investigative doctor kind of person, so he's out there digging up all this stuff. And one of the things he does is he goes through and he finds data and research that was done but never published. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that until the invention of the internet, if you disagreed with the party line, so to speak, in whatever field it was, especially in healthcare, you couldn't get an article published and up until the time of the internet. If you tried to get something published, you basically destroyed your career. But with the internet, people started publishing things without the okay of academia and academic hierarchy. So Dr. Ramsden from the National Institute of Health, he unearthed the raw data from that Minnesota study, which challenges the dogma that eating vegetable fats instead of animal fats is good for the heart. The study was the largest gold standard experiment that has ever been done, and it found exactly the opposite, that eating large amounts of animal fats is better for you than eating lots of vegetable fats. Let me come down here, and let's move on here. So what we have, and I've got some notes here today, and I'm just going to refer to them. Decades worth of research has utterly failed to demonstrate that there is a correlation between animal fats and heart disease. And announcing cholesterol is not, back in November of 2015, the committee, the USDA Committee on Diet and Nutrition met up at Harvard, chaired by William Willett up there, who's a professor at Harvard, in which they found that cholesterol is not considered a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. In other words, what he said in the press release is we've had it wrong for 40 years, and that eating fat does not cause heart disease, and eggs and bacon are back on the menu, provided you're not vegetarian. So let's see, what else do I have here for you? We talked about the unpublished research that Dr. Keyes, he did the research and then didn't publish it. That is just as dishonest as faking the research. His research formed the foundation for all of the low-fat recommendations that followed. Interestingly, some of his own follow-up research actually undermined his hypothesis on cholesterol and saturated fat, but these findings were never published. Keyes, largely funded by the sugar industry, is believed to have been responsible for suppressing damaging studies to the ideology, and it doesn't support his original hypothesis. I'm getting this off to Dr. Mercola's site because he's put all this together in a really nice, succinct way. Only parts of the trials were ever actually published, leaving out the controversial finding that replacing saturated fats, animal fats, with vegetable oil had no benefit on mortality as reported. This was reported in Scientific American. We talked about Dr. Ramsden just a minute ago. So saturated fat has been vindicated in the most rigorous trials of its kind. Remember that what it shows us, let me get down here, is that when you lower cholesterol rates points by 30 points, you get an increase in mortality rates. So what is so bad about the vegetable oils that they're telling us all to use? Well, here are things that are associated with vegetable oil consumption: gut inflammation and leaky gut. Why would vegetable oils lead to leaky gut? Anybody got an idea? Most of the things that are used as vegetable oils, all right, especially canola. By the way, has anybody ever seen a canola plant? No, because there isn't one. Do you know what canola oil is made from? It's made from rape seed, primarily grown in Canada. And when they tried to market the stuff, nobody would buy it when it was called rape seed, because rape doesn't have a very good connotation, as we all know. And so they rebranded it as canola Canada oil. That's where canola comes from, Canada oil. And so what is so bad about all these vegetable oils and canola oils? They're sprayed with what? Who knows? Anybody? They're sprayed with Roundup. Roundup destroys the intestinal lining. And so vegetable oils contribute to gut inflammation and leaky gut. Vegetable oils have been shown to contribute to heartburn, depletes your brain of antioxidants. That is not good. It triggers autoimmune diseases. It triggers cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease, causes mutagenic effects on DNA, and alters epigenetic expression. What we know about epigenetic expression, you know, this fella came back from outer space, Scott Kelly, several months ago. 28% of his DNA had changed while he was in space. When he went into space, he had an identical twin, and now he does not. When vegetable oils are heated, they tend to oxidize. And according to Dr. Fred Kummerow, oxidized cholesterol is the real culprit that causes heart disease. By triggering inflammation, it promotes the clogging of arteries and associated cardiovascular problems, including heart attacks. Remember, heart disease is not a lipid fat disease. Heart disease is an inflammatory disease. So, what should you do? Let's pull those out so I can pop this up here. And what should you use? Well, I'm going to tell you what I use in my house. We use basically olive oil. Remember, olive is not a vegetable. Okay. Coconut oil is good, and lard. What did your grandmother and your great-grandmother used to cook with back before heart disease even existed? They cooked with butter and lard, because they didn't even have olive oil because they weren't importing it that much out of Spain and Italy, Greece, and places like that. So what we use in our house to cook with is olive oil, coconut oil, lard, and butter. Those are the things that we cook with in my house. And what we do is we pick the one that we want based on whether or not we want it to have, have a taste, influence on whatever we're cooking, and also on the temperature that you're cooking. One of the things, olive oil, if you get it too hot, it'll smoke. If you get butter too hot, it will burn. Coconut oil can get a lot hotter, and lard can get a lot hotter. And, if you've ever cooked with lard, give me a shout out there, and you can give me a thumbs up or a smiley face or something like that. Love to see it. But, you can actually buy lard, if you never have, in a block. That's how we get it in a little block. And that's what we use when we need to cook something and we want to get it really, really hot. So that's what we talked about today, is that you should really be using animal-based fats or nut-based fats like olives and coconut. So next week, we are going to talk about the different actual body systems that are related to statin drugs and the things like musculoskeletal stuff, joint pain, muscle pain, things like that, cognitive decline. And I'm going to show you next week the actual studies that have proven and linked the use of statin drugs to these, the perpetuation of these diseases. So if you have something you would like for me to talk about, please just put a comment here under the video, or you can write to me at drglennlive@gmail.com, and I would be happy to take your recommendations and do a Facebook Live on those. I really appreciate you being here today, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. And also, over the next couple of months, I'm going to start putting in a lot of different little aspects on thyroid disease as well, because lots and lots of people have questions about thyroid disease. So if anybody wants to ask me a question, I've got just a couple of moments before I'm going to go have my lunch, and I'd be happy to answer anybody's questions out there. Okay, yes, lard. I do use lard. I know it sounds so archaic, but think back to what did your grandmother cook with? She probably cooked with butter and lard, and that was before heart disease was even a problem. So hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I will see you next week for Dr. Glenn Live. Take care.